Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm Councillor Chris Atwell, Chair of the Planning Committee. Let's do the introduction bit. Limited public seating has been made available. However, this meeting is also being webcast to allow the public to attend remotely if they so wish. The public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble by Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed and everyone speaking via a microphone will be on camera, including those making deputations. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when you have finished. If there is any voting, please can members keep their hands raised clearly until the votes have been stated. Okay. Apologies. We have some apologies. Councillors George Fielding, I have Hugh Mason on my list of apologies. You appear to be here, so that's good. Okay, you're here. And yet you're here. You're very much here. You're not a figment of our imaginations. And Councillor Gerald Vernon Jackson is absent. Members, we should do the introduction. We haven't done the introductions. Let's go around to some introductions, shall we? There are the apologies. Committee members, would you like to introduce yourselves in the first instance?
Councillor Russell Simpson, Hilsey Ward.
Councillor Judith Smythe, St Jude Ward.
Thank you, Judith.
Morning, Chair. Councillor John Smith, Eastern Craneswater.
Thank you, John.
Morning, Linda Symes, Eastern Craneswater.
Thank you, Linda.
Councillor Hugh Mason, St Jude Ward.
Thank you, Hugh.
Councillor Darren Sanders, Baffins Ward.
Thank you, Hugh. And officers present, if you could introduce yourselves.
Good morning all, I'm Juliette Gill, I'm the Principal Planning Solicitor at Portsmouth City Council, so I'm here to advise the committee.
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Simon Turner, Acting Head of Development Management.
Thank you, Simon. Those here to give deputations, if you could just introduce yourselves, if we can start on the left-hand side of the room.
Chris Frost, Future Planning Development, speaking on the Mary Rose and Dragon Restaurant.
I'm Simon Hill, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant for 49 St Perrins Avenue.
I'm Gary Tobbett, I'm from 47 St Perrins Avenue.
Thank you. If I could ask you just to get a little closer to the microphone so we can all hear. Okay, thank you. I'm not sure whether the microphone's working properly, but yes. Thank you, Mr. Leonard.
Mike Saunders from PDP Architecture, agent for the High Street Cosham application.
Thank you very much. Members, any declarations of interests? Councillor Sanders.
Thanks, Chris. I will have to withdraw from determination of 49 St Perrins Avenue. As you can see, I'm down as an objector, which I will do, so I'll withdraw. Now, I know that means that if it comes second, because there's more people for that than anything else, I will not be here for the rest of the meeting, I'm told. I would like to be, but I understand I can't be. So okay. I leave that in your guidance, Chris.
Well, we're sticking to the agenda, so... No, we're sticking to the agenda. Any other any declarations of interest, members? Councillor New, hello, welcome.
Good morning, Chair. Apologies for being late. It's cold and I hadn't counted on defrosting my car.
It's cold out there today. Minutes of the previous meeting held on the 21st of December, pages 5 to 16 of the pack. Are we content? Councillor Smythe?
Chair, I just wondered if I'd heard right that we've got to change in rules, that if somebody has an interest, they have to withdraw and then they can't be here for the rest of the meeting. That never used to be the rule, and I think it's a problem.
Juliette.
It depends on the type of interest. If it's a disclosable pecuniary interest, you need to withdraw. If it's bias or predetermination, you can make comments to the committee, but you can't participate in the debate or vote.
I understand that, but what I heard you saying was that you couldn't come back into the meeting afterwards, after that event.
Well, it's the last item.
No, you can come back in.
Thank
you obviously can't be there for that item.
Thank you. I just want to make this committee even
Thank
more
you, we
corporal
got
than it
confused.
is.
Yeah, no, sorry. It's the last item, so you get an early exit. In terms of the minutes, pages 5 to 16, are we content? I shall sign those afterwards. Let's get to today's substantive business. Item 4 on the agenda, Tipner East. Simon, you have an update for us. Members will have read on your SMAT. There is news.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as per the Supplementary Matters report, the application needs to be deferred because of objections from the Environment Agency and Coastal Partners received on Monday, so after publication of the report. It's regrettable, and apologies to anyone who's taken the time to read the report and so on, but there are some important objection points raised by the agency in particular concerning flood emergency planning, coordination with the coastal partners, the details of the seawall, and up-to-date data, so not something that's resolvable in a less than two-day period. So that's why we're not in a position to discuss the application today properly. We will, of course, work with the applicant and the Environment Agency and coastal partners to resolve the problems as quickly as possible, and would like to return the application to committee for determination as soon as possible.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Mason and then Councillor New.
Given that this planning application was put in, I see, on the 6th of September last year, do we know why they have taken so long to come up with an objection? Because it certainly makes the business of this committee much more difficult in that we will have to rearrange the whole thing.
Thank you, Councillor. I understand they did object fairly promptly first time round. Further negotiation and discussion, scoping of the information needed took place. A resubmission was made by the applicant before Christmas. So the Environment Agency has, to be fair, been prompt in turning its advice around, but clearly the applicant has not been able to provide the right information. So hence a second reply of objection.
Rob, Darren, could I ask you to turn your microphone off?
Thank you, Chair. Just where I was there, I was just asking if I could maybe get a copy of those papers just to have a read through on them. That was all. Thank you.
So we have a deferral for the Tipner East, and will come back to us as soon as possible. Move on. High Street, Cosham. Simon, over to you for the presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. So we have at least the agent here to speak afterwards, and some supplementary matters updates, but I'll take you through the scheme first of all. Just waiting for it to come up on the screen. Thank you, Chairman. Apologies for that. It was working earlier. Right, an application at 77 to 79 High Street, Cosham. It's quite a long description there, but in essence, it is the construction of 2 extra stories above existing ground floor flat-roofed commercial premises to form 8 flats across 2 stories. So you can see the site there towards the northern end of Cosham High Street, Magdala Road coming off to the east and Dorking Crescent behind, the pedestrianised areas further to the north and the train station further to the south. So it's in the middle of Cosham High Street. To the rear we have a relatively new care home, which you can see there, and houses opposite the site, and then we have commercial units fronting the high street with some flats, etc. There are some ground floor flats in this site, for example. This is the unit here, topped in white. It's currently subdivided into 3 smaller units. So that will be built upon with the extra 2 stories referred to, with some flats facing the high street, therefore, and some to the rear of the site. Bit of a further view. So looking north on the high street, there's the site just there. So you get an idea of the context. The high street is one way, I think, at this point, moving south with respect to vehicles. And then looking south, there is the site again, just on the left-hand side there. At the rear, it's a typical rear commercial appearance, utilitarian, red brick, like next door, facing onto Dorking Crescent. That is the new elevation, but I'll take you through that in a bit more detail. This is Dorking Crescent standing at the junction of Magdala Road looking south. It's hard for me to... looking north, I do apologise. Looking north towards Magdala Road. These are the houses opposite, and that is the site there with a slightly taller building behind it to the north. This is looking south on Dorking Crescent, so the site is on the right-hand side here, and the care home and the houses opposite. And Dorking Crescent curves round to the left there. This is the existing flat at ground floor. So the development would require some remodelling and building on the front and side to provide bin stores and an access way, bike stores, etc., and the stairs up to the first floor, which is where the main construction would be. 2 new stories. So a first floor and a second floor. So you would emerge out of the stairs here and turn right to go into the 2 flats facing Dorking Crescent. This one has its own little private patio on the front, and there's a shared general terrace area there. And again, this one facing the high street here would have its own private patio as well. Or if you're going to the second floor, carry on up the stairs and emerge out onto these sort of walkways to get into the 2 flats at the front, 2 flats at the rear. So we have 2-bedroomed, 1-bedroomed, 2-bedroomed, 1-bedroomed repeated on the second floor. So 4 1-bedroom flats, 4 2-bedroom flats. So the access is from, as I say, Dorking Crescent upstairs and then in this shared courtyard area into the flats. So the frontage flats face onto the high street. The flats at the rear, at the east, face onto Dorking Crescent. There's the street scene. So various heights, mostly flat roof buildings. So this would add on 2 stories and still sit within the range of heights there. Good contemporary design, suggesting a grey-coloured cladding, brickwork at the front with some details. And to the rear, more of the red brick approach to reflect the other existing and adjoining buildings also. A bit more detail here. I don't know how much you can see on this image, but good quality architecture, I think, with some brick detailing, string courses, headed bricks, stretcher headed columns and so on, stacked bonding, some feature bricks on both elevations, just enough to enliven it without it being too busy. So I think some good design materials there. And that's just a cross section, just to give you a view of the central area of the site. So there's the high street, flats looking over the high street. The access is behind up here and emerging at this point. And as I said before, you then turn right into the frontage flats or carry on upstairs or turn left to the high street frontage flats. Just those are the internal views in the courtyard, looking at the backs of the flats either way. And then some CGIs just to show you how it would look in the high street. There's the new development filling in that hole. And at the rear as well, the two-storey development there. With respect to the supplementary matters, a few points here. The 5-year housing land supply was updated just before Christmas, and some of our reports didn't pick that up in time. So as a correction, it's not 3.8 years, it is 2.9, as stated in the SMAT here. In this instance, this changed figure is not considered to alter the recommendation. There's been a parking survey originally carried out by the applicant and has been carried out further. It still demonstrates that there is free and unrestricted on-street parking capacity within 200 metres of the site, mostly on Dorking Crescent. We've reconsulted the Local Highways Authority for completeness, and they have commented, again, there is sufficient capacity available that could accommodate the additional demand generated by the development. With respect to the special protection areas in the Solent and the harbours, we haven't had a reply back from Natural England. So as with the other items where we're waiting for their reply on the habitats regulations assessment, we just need to get their confirmation post today's decision of a no objection before we can go on to issue the planning consent. Were we to get an objection, that couldn't happen. But in most cases, it's no problems. So we just need to have that augmented resolution, as in Appendix 1, to wait for their no objection before we go on to issue an approval, if that's the decision today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Simon. We haven't got an objector here for this. No? Okay. So, Mr. Saunders, over to you for your deputation. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Michael Saunders from PDP Architecture, who are the agents for this application. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today in support of this application on behalf of our client, the applicant, Mr. Mark Smith. This application proposes to provide 8 market apartments, 4 one-bedroom and 4 two-bedroom, within 2 new stories above an existing single-storey commercial unit at 77 to 79 Cosham High Street. The ground floor existing commercial units facing the High Street will be retained in this development, meaning no loss of employment use on the site. Instead, this proposal aims to utilise current airspace above the single-storey shops to provide 8 much-needed apartments, all designed to meet nationally described space standards. The apartments would be accessed from Dorking Crescent, and the proposal takes the overall form of 3-storey blocks to the front and rear of the site, linked by a central first-floor private amenity courtyard space. Externally, the proposal takes the form of contemporary brick facades with large windows and glazed brick and metal trims to the window apertures, providing a simple architectural language and scale befitting a local district high street. We believe such a development, utilising an underdeveloped plot in a highly sustainable and accessible high street location, should be supported, as it represents a high-quality scheme in terms of accommodation and contemporary design. The proposed increase in scale is in line with the other existing and future developments along the high street. Care has been taken to ensure the impact on neighbouring properties is minimal, and they are not overlooked or have their future development potential hindered by these proposals. This planning application was submitted to the local planning authority some 13 months ago, and the applicant has been both patient and understanding, given we have been allocated 4 planning officers during this protracted determination period. That said, we have endeavoured to work closely with the planning authority to develop the proposals seen here today, and we'd like to thank the current case officer for his professional and collaborative approach since taking over this application. As you will have read in the case officer's report, this application is brought to the committee at the request of the ward councillor due to 6 objections received from members of the public on matters which the officer's report highlights have subsequently been addressed. It should be noted that the application received 6 comments of support from members of the public, highlighting how the proposed apartments address a local demand for residential accommodation in this excellently served district centre location. A key reason given by objectors was the impact the development would have on car parking in the area, and we have worked with the planning department to ensure that all car parking concerns have been addressed through a series of car parking surveys and a robust transport statement. Although we expect users of the site to take advantage of the excellent public transport links in the area, a large secure cycle stall for residents has been provided, and we can confirm that the car parking surveys showed the local highways have sufficient capacity to accommodate on-street car parking as a result of this development. The applicant is a conscientious local landlord and an active member of the community in Cosham. He is a key supporter of the regeneration of Cosham High Street and provides a number of commercial and residential lets in the area. Given his local background, he is fully aware of both the local commercial and residential accommodation needs in Cosham. Therefore, in summary, we feel this development represents a clear benefit to Cosham High Street by addressing housing need on underutilised property in a highly accessible location, with no loss of current commercial space or employment, and in liaison with the case officers has produced a proposal that a welcome addition to the street scene. I'd once again like to thank the case officer and thank members of the committee for listening today and ask that the members agree with the officer's recommendation to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. Members, questions? Councillor New.
Thank you. I'd like to start just to ask my question by basically saying I think this is a really good application, especially in this area. This part of the high street definitely needs a little bit of love, I think. So seeing applications like this come forward is quite good to see for myself personally. But it's just really with regards to the seal levy, because I've noted that we've had some applications coming to the committee recently where they've been able to use some of the mechanisms that we have at the City Council to basically get out of paying them by saying that their development wouldn't actually be viable without it. But in this case, there's actually quite a lot of detail in the report saying that the likely amount would be around 96,000 circa. But it does say that there might be some exemptions, exclusions and reliefs. I just wanted to ask the case officer where we are at the moment, because that kind of feels a bit wishy-washy, and if you could just maybe advise just on whether it would actually they would be paying that, because I know as Cosham certainly needs as much as it can get in terms of things like seal for this kind of development going forward, but I think the actual application overall looks pretty good.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm by no means an expert on SIL, and it can be quite complicated. I think, for want of a better phrase, we're hedging our bets by explaining that we expect it to be a certain sum, £96,000 in this case, but there are various other criteria that could affect that, and post-decision, post-consent being granted, the applicant then works with us further with our SIL colleagues just to nail down exactly what the circumstances of the building are, levels of vacancy, that sort of thing, rebuilding, and so on, before we can actually finalise on the sum. But what we put in here is what we expect it to be at this stage.
Thank you. Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, to help Rob, I think having a chat with a guy called Adam Breacher, who's the SIL officer, would actually help a lot. He's been very helpful with SIL in our ward, trying to negotiate the intricacies of all of that. So I think that may be able to answer your questions, Rob. Just two questions, Simon. How many, the last sentence of 2.7 says the applicant intends to implement the 2 flats approved as well as the development now proposed. Does that mean that 10 flats are going to go on this site? That's the actual impact on local residents, correct?
That's right, yes.
Okay. Just 2 of them have got approval already. That's it, yeah. With regards to that, I noticed that in 210, that extant consent was firstly refused and was later approved, which indicates some concern amongst the planning team about development on this site. Why did it move from refusal to approval? What changed? And what were your concerns originally? And if you don't know, that's fine.
I don't know. I haven't looked at that in any detail. It's superseded by the consent, so I'm afraid I don't know.
That's right. It just helps us because clearly that indicates there's another application later on where there's another bit where there's been a refusal and acceptance later on down the line. So I just want to check and see with that. But no, those are my questions, Chris.
Thank you, Darren. Any further questions? Councillor Mason.
Given that this is a 2-storey extension and that the building to the north is merely 1 storey, will that have planning implications for this one-storey building to the north, which looks rather anomalous at the present time?
Yes, it would form a gap in the street scene, if you like, at that level. A little bit unusual, but I don't think it would be cause any material harm to the appearance of the streetscape. Just wouldn't be particularly noticeable as you're walking down the street. Single, 2, 3-storey buildings form the majority of the street scheme, and you do get ups and downs between buildings. So I don't think there will be any material townscape harm.
So you see no constraint on what they could build. If the neighbours wish to build up, they would not be constrained by that.
Oh, well, there'll be party wall matters, of course, to sort out separate to the planning permission.
Yes,
but
the obvious things, party wall matters.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Councillor
Chair.
Smith?
I like the scheme overall. Just a couple of questions, really. One was around, Simon, you mentioned about range of heights, picking up on the last point, really, in a way. Is this building going to be the largest building in the street? Tallest?
No. Directly opposite Peacocks has, I think it's 2 stories, but generous stories, because the commercial stories tend to be taller than a residential one. Peacocks opposite has 2 generous stories and then a mansard roof. And I can see, I'm just looking on the photographs of the street scene rather than memory. There's a variety of sizes, but certainly this sort of height is entirely the norm. And the building, the NatWest building to its left-hand side is only a touch shorter at 2 stories. So I'm entirely happy it will fit in.
And my second question was around, I hear it said about there's no loss of business use, which is all good. But on the parking side, has there been any research into parking for shoppers?
I don't believe so, because the shopping situation, the commercial situation remains as is. The rear of the site, as far as I can see, was for deliveries and toings and froings from the commercial rather than visitor parking. You've got the high street, various on-street metered bays, etc., available for that. So really, it's no change with respect to commercial.
You've got the increase in the 10 properties that are going in there will be there, so you've got that.
Yeah, so returning, it's obviously a very sustainable location with a train station, buses and a town centre, hospital, etc., etc. So we're quite happy with that. As it happens, there is on-street parking capacity. Their survey has shown that on Dorking Crescent, which is where people come and go into the building, will come and go, there are sufficient spaces within 200 metres of the site, and Dorking Crescent goes more like 300 metres round. I've been there. My observations corresponded with the survey, so there's existing capacity on street, should everyone wish to bring a car.
Comments, members? Darren.
I wish to move the officer's recommendations with any additional conditions that are put forwards.
Happy to second.
Okay, members, any other opinions? Okay, let's move to the vote. In favour of the officer's recommendations?
I think that was unanimous.
I think so too. Thank you, Juliet. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to Highland Road.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think we have any deputations today for this one. We'll have some updates once I've taken you through. This is an application at 167169 Highland Road for the construction of a 3-storey building plus mansard roof, i.e. 4 stories, to form 4 flats. It's on the corner, diagonally opposite Highland Road. I'll show you the photograph, which might help locate you more quickly. That's the site on the corner there, the Guitar Centre. And that's Hellyer Road, heading north. I'll take you back a little bit. So there's the site on the corner of Highland Road and Hellyer Road. Hellyer Road's one way, heading north. We've got Highland Road Cemetery just there, and Highland Road with the mix of commercial and residential along this part of it. Next door, we've got some fairly late 20th century, early 21st century flats, and then to the rear, some members might recall about a year ago we had an application to convert this particular building, it's 2-storey, and to add a 3rd storey on top to provide 3 flats there. So the site in more detail, the building itself and the forecourt. There's the utilitarian guitar centre, south elevation facing Highland Road, the flats next door, and then the side road elevation next to, they've shown the building as approved with the extra storey next door. There's the application site. This part of Highland Road is characterised by 4 courts, some with parking, some without. Rather unfortunate appearance along the road, which I'll come back to in a moment, and indeed the building itself isn't great. So this is an opportunity actually for some townscape improvement. That's looking further east along Highland Road, heading towards Eastney. Houses opposite. And then looking west towards Southsea, there's the cemetery on the left-hand side, pedestrian crossing, and more of the forecourts, etc. Flats above shops or other commercial premises. That's the proposal. So the 3-storey to eaves height plus a mansard, so a flat on each floor, giving 4 stories. Masonry, fairly smart design. Frontage forecourt with planting. That's the side elevation to Hellyer Road. That's the as approved plan next door. This would be the access way. It's a recessed doorway to give a bit of shadow and detail into the flats. That is a bin store, and then a flat on each storey. So there's the door again into the bike store, into the ground floor flat, and up the stairs to the upper flats. There's the bin store. Each flat is 2-bedroomed. This one has its kitchen living area there. The application started off with 2 parking bays on the forecourt, but at the request of the Highways Authority they've been deleted because of highway objection concerns there, next to Hellyer Road and with the busy main road, quite narrow, lots of traffic, and also with other parking reducing visibility. They felt that was a real danger backing out of the site. So the 2 parking bays originally proposed have come off the scheme. I know lots of people would like parking, but instead we get an environmental improvement of a planted front forecourt, both for the benefit of the public realm, with a wall and low railings, backed by hedge, trees, shrubs, etc. And then also, should any of the residents wish to come out and sit here, and a bit of protection between the first flat and the street, if you like. The first 2 stories, without the bike and bin stores, are bigger, still 2-bedroom, but a much larger kitchen living room area. Those are flats 2 and 3, and the top storey just slightly reduced compared to the lower 2 because of the mansard roof, but again a decent sized L-shaped kitchen living area and 2 bedrooms and bathroom. That's a canter through the proposal. Some updates, quite a few updates, if you'll bear with me please. We've had a letter, an extra letter of objection to add to the existing. This person objects to this development and 3 flats proposed at 94 to 98 Highfield Road, which has just been arrived before Christmas. That's further east along Highfield Road. They're concerned about parking pressure on the local roads. They also believe there may be an application due on the opposite side of the road to the Co-op store further along there on Highland Road. This objector notes it can take 15 minutes or more to find a parking space in the evenings, sometimes several roads away from your home, which is inconvenient and challenging and unpleasant if you've got children, shopping, etc. And not everyone feels particularly safe in the evenings in the dark. The objector understands that additional permits in Zone MG were issued on the north side of Highland Road, and she has perceived a very visible increase in parking pressures in the last few months. She does understand that development space is at a premium, but urges the developments to have their own parking. The planning officer response, we do acknowledge the parking issue here and in other parts of the city, but in brief, the planning balance does indicate that the principal factors of new dwellings at a sustainable location with good public transport and access on foot and bike to so many local facilities and shops and services and leisure and jobs, those would outweigh any negative effects of the development. The 5-year housing land supply, as with the first report, just need to update that to 2.9 years. Over onto page 3. Back to the parking. We reconsulted the local highways authority for completeness following the removal of those 2 bays on the forecourt. They note that resolves the safety concern they had outlined. They do note, as a consequence of removing the parking, there would be likely greater pressure for on-street parking with detrimental impact on amenity, from recollection they mean. Again, we return to the sustainability issue, and in the planning balance, we feel the benefits of the scheme would outweigh any adverse effects. Regulatory services, we've received a reply, no objection, subject to sound insulation to habitable room windows, of course, on the busy main road. That's an extra condition attached in Appendix 2. And then lastly, we didn't attach the standard sustainable construction condition, which we would also propose to attach in the event of a consent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. Members, questions? Darren.
Just one question, Chris. Simon, in paragraph 621, it says, I'll read out the sentence for you, Simon. It's understood that the demand for parking on street regularly exceeds the space available, particularly in the evenings and weekends. How is it understood?
Sorry, we have that data from the Highways Authority. This site is at, well, it's in one parking zone, and it's opposite 2 more, so 3 parking zones around this site. And those 3 zones vary from, at worst, 103% capacity, i.e. more permits than capacity. And the 3rd one is at 96% capacity, so some spaces available.
Thank you, Simon. That answers my question, Chris.
Any further questions on the application? Comments? Hugh.
I think this is a very interesting piece of design. I like the way the fenestration at the front matches with the building immediately to the east. Obviously, nothing could be done on the Helier Road site to match that. I'm also glad to see that the building line has been maintained. There must have been a temptation to use that forecourt area and to extend the properties. I'm glad to see that has not been done, since it maintains the building line along Highland Road. And so I think it's a good piece of design. It's sympathetic to the area, and I would propose the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Hugh. Linda? Seconded? Yeah. Okay. Any further comments? We have a proposal. Seconder? Judith?
Going to second it, and I'm particularly pleased to see the 3 trees in the front and a bit of green, and it would be nice if other people who own properties along there use that rather unfortunate, well, ill-made up strip that's been left. And in fact, the 3 trees there and a bit of seating will echo the much welcome development of the Living Streets initiative further west along the street, and I think it could mark a bit of a regeneration and greening of that area and so I welcome this also.
So, Darren.
I was going to propose refusing the application on grounds of impact on car parking spaces. The comments of the highways officer are rare in this committee, and that's been backed up by the supplementary matters. So I would refuse it on those grounds. He's dealt with the off-street car parking very easily, and I thank Simon for that. But on those grounds, I propose refusal. I expect I will have no other takers for this, so if it could be noted in the minutes if I have no other takers. Thank you.
Let us check. Anybody want to second Councillor Sanders' proposal? No? Okay. If that's where we're at, let's go to the vote. So those in favour? Against? What are the numbers, Stuart?
The planning permission has been granted.
Okay. On to Beach Road. Number 12, Beach Road, to be
Thank you.
accurate.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Chair. There are indeed two applications on Beach Road. This is the first of them, number 12. It's an application to convert the existing dwelling into 3 flats, 1 on each floor. There's Beach Road, just a couple of streets in from the South Sea seafront. Terraced properties. There it is with the red arrow above it. So it's an extended property, quite a lot of them are, as you can see, at upper level with various dormers at the front and indeed at the back. There's the back one. This application will be to convert the existing building and for rear dormer extensions to provide enough room for the upper floor flat. So the existing property, typical Victorian property with the main body of the house and the rear wing, ditto at first floor, the slightly smaller rear wing, and then the roof space with the front dormer there and the rear dormer providing some roof accommodation. So the application would be to convert the building into 3 flats, enter here, ground floor flat, living, dining, kitchen area in the main body of the house, bedroom at the rear and bathroom. And the ground floor flat would have the enjoyment of the rear yard for themselves through the French doors. Up to the first floor, being in the flood zone still, there's a refuge area so that the ground floor flat, there are conditions relating to emergency flood plan. So if they get that call in the middle of the night about flooding, they can be woken up and just quickly go up to the first floor and take the refuge there. Otherwise, the first floor flat has a kitchen, living, bedroom and bathroom, and again in the upper floor with extensions at the rear roof height to provide that flat. So that's the existing side elevations, the ground floor wing and the first floor wing. So the proposal is to add a first floor on the rear wing and a dormer on the rear roof slope, like this. Fairly sizable, but not, in the officer opinion, undue effect for the local amenity or for the conservation area character either. Members may recall, number 24, I think it was, just up the road 4 or 5 months ago for the same sort of thing. We had a good debate about that one. There's space on the forecourt for 1 car, and I think some houses might try and fit 2 on, but there's not space for a car and waste storage and bicycle storage. So we would expect 1 car park space on the front for whichever one of the flat occupiers would be allocated that. In terms of updates on the supplementary matters, The Highway Authority comments, again, they note that local parking demand exceeds capacity, and this proposal would increase the parking demand by 1 space compared to the existing house. So they note it would make more inconvenience for local residents to park with that 1 extra demand, with implications for residential amenity, but they do not object on highway safety, capacity or accessibility. So again, given the sustainability credentials of this site in Southsea, with all the access to shops and leisure, jobs, and public transport, we don't think there is a highways reason to refuse planning permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Judith.
I know that it says again, which I thought we weren't going to put this in, that the application is brought to Planning Committee due to a call-in request from me. I did have a general interest in Beach Road, particularly in the number of HMOs that I consider to be substandard in that road. I don't have any objection to this, and I don't have any intention to object. I have a question, the question is, are we satisfied that the top floor is of an adequate standard? And perhaps we could look back again at the plans. I'm looking at where are they going to put a washing machine, where are they going to put a fridge, and are we satisfied that the ceiling heights do actually result in the 37 square metres that's claimed on the plans? But before I do that, though, I'd like to say that is this, and the second question is this a conversion from a building that was in practiced use as an HMO before? Because in which case I would welcome that, because some of the HMOs down there are very poor standard of accommodation. So two questions, please, Chair.
Simon. This will, of course, echo a question that we've had previously in properties on Beach Road. This echoes a question we've had previously on properties.
It is. That's partly why I'm doing it, to build on our experience of what's been going on in planning in this street.
Lindsay, would you mind using your microphone just so we can all hear?
Although the person owning it says it's been used for multiple occupation, it's not listed as that use. So it does say that.
It does, yes, but some clarification would be useful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We have the use class as lawful use as a dwelling house, just for clarification there. With respect to that's right, Councillor Smythe, we had the debate with, I think it was number 24 a few months ago, for the top storey flat. This one is 37.5 square metres. We have double-checked that carefully with respect to head heights and the overall area. The national standards are 37, so it's just squeaking in there with an extra half a square metre. It's managed to do it this time. It has, because of the front dormer being a big one, it didn't have the same problems as previously, or not problems, but head height restriction. So it hits the criteria on the nail, or exceeds it by half a square metre. So you would expect it's quite small, but it is big enough in terms of the national standards. So you can expect to find some sort of sensible arrangement, to answer your question about washing machine, etc., in order to use that flat for one person.
Judith, is that sufficient?
Well, it did strike me, particularly in this one, that a more intelligent layout of the bathroom, which is fairly substantial for a one-bedroom flat, could allow for a washing machine to be put in. And possibly it's not something we can deal with in a planning permission. And I suppose they could probably squeeze a fridge into the kitchen at the far corner near the window, but it's a bit difficult. Have you any comments on that?
I dare say they may well wish to amend things as they actually get into the construction and get a joiner and a plumber, actually looking at the details actually on site with respect for the bathroom, for example. That's a new build, so there might be plenty of flexibility there. And again, the kitchen looks straightforward, doesn't it? You've got a bank there of kitchen units. That is a kitchen type arrangement there with more space beyond that for sitting and dining and any other storage. So yes, I mean, I think it meets the standard, and a reasonable layout seems quite possible.
Thank you.
Councillor Mason.
We're extending the second floor. Were I living in 16 Somerset Road, I would be concerned about overlooking. What is the distance between the rearmost window and the buildings of 16 Somerset Road, please?
If you can just give me a minute to find that out, Councillor. About 19, 20 metres approximately. That's, yeah, Central Southsea, we have these fairly tight distances. That actually is reasonably close to what some local authorities have as a general standard. Obviously, you want to look at the character of the area. I have noticed as well, it is quite tight generally there. The site tapers, or the roads taper, so further west, that distance becomes even less and less. But I think there's an existing rear dormer and other rear dormers, so I don't expect, and we haven't had an objection, that the occupiers of Somerset Road would necessarily feel a great deal of difference in terms of the perception of overlooking and any actual real overlooking.
Councillor Sanders.
Thanks, Chris. I just want to clear up a point of confusion. I don't think it's your confusion, Simon. I think it's the confusion of the Highways Authority on this. In paragraph 822 of the original report, the original scheme would effectively, the current house can have 4 parking spaces. That's what that says. So under the original plans, moving from 4 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms would cut the number of parking spaces from 4 to 3. That sounds like logic to me. In the SMAT, the views of the local highway authority is that actually the numbers will go up, even though the number of bedrooms will go down. Now, there's a subsequent question as to when anything can park on the forecourt, which seems to have created this particular issue, and I'd be grateful for your advice on that. But am I reading that correctly? And if I'm not, please tell me.
Thank you, Councillor. I noticed that as well, and apologies. We're talking about 2 different things here, so it was quite helpful to have the opportunity to SMAT to say, listen, this is what the Highways Authority have said about the increase of 1 parking demand space. The case officer was talking about, or the planning officer was talking about, the permit situation, which I'd rather not get into, because different zones have different permits, how many you could apply for, etc., per property. So we're talking slightly different cross purposes, I think, between the paragraph you've mentioned and the supplementary matters. I think the important thing to do is to stick with what the local highways authority have advised, is that there would be 1 extra parking demand space.
Which leads to my second question, which is, I understand you can't park 2 cars on the forecourt, but can you park 1?
I dare say you could try and squeeze 2 on now.
No, Simon,
yeah,
that's beautifully not answering my question. That's absolutely superb, and thank you for that. You clearly can't park 2 cars on there. I get that. Can you park 1?
Indeed, absolutely. Yep.
Fine. Because that actually affects the amount of real parking impact on the area, indeed, which turns an increase of 1 space to, at worst, no increase in an area where you can't park now, in my humble opinion.
Okay. Councillor Smythe.
This is something I'll take up again after this meeting, but the parking around here is exacerbated considerably by the temporary car parking permits issued by the hotels in this area. And that has been, many residents around there have pointed out that this has made parking much more difficult, even for those who are holding the proper permits and so forth, because the hotel, particularly one of the hotels issues temporary parking permits, which are quite usually used. So it is something that does need to be looked at down there in terms of the policy for giving out parking permits.
Okay. Comments? Councillor Sanders, and then
I propose moving the officers' recommendations. I think we often get accused on this committee of condemning increases in bedrooms. And so it would be a bit weird if we opposed a reduction in bedrooms. I have no idea if this is a HMO or not. I'm told there will be no HMOs in 6 months in this city due to some stuff the Cabinet is doing. But I'm intending we need one-bedroom flats in this area. Okay. Judith is completely right about the problems with antisocial behaviour. I think this is a welcome development, and I'm particularly pleased that there will be no detrimental impact on an area where you can't park.
Linda, did you?
Only to say that this area was typified by HMOs that had a bad reputation. Any move to change that, as has happened in the rest of the city, is very welcome.
Positive thing, absolutely. Hugh?
Knowing the area quite well, the building number 12 is in a fairly poor condition at the present time, and so this development, I think, is welcomed, since it will improve the quality of living in that particular building.
Thank you. Judith? Thank you. Okay, we have a proposer and a seconder. Any other views? We shall move to the vote. Those in favour? I think that's unanimous.
That's unanimous. Planning permission is granted.
Thank you, Juliet. Number 8, Beach Road.
Thank you, Chair. This is a very similar application, similar building, same applicant, same architect, etc. Next door but 2 at 8 Beach Road, Southsea, for conversion of a house to 3 one-bedroomed flats. So it's 2 doors along to the east from where we saw previously. There's the splayed streets of Somerset Road and Beach Road that Councillor Mason was alive to, so this one is slightly further away from the property to the north on that point. There it is. This one has a smaller front dormer and a larger rear dormer on the bottom right, but has the same proposals at the rear to extend at height. Because this one has the smaller front dormer, it has slightly smaller space, and this one's at 37 square metres. That's half a metre less than the other one, but again on the nose with respect to the national standard. Otherwise, the layout is the same: ground floor flat, access to the rear garden, first floor flat with the refuge for flood emergency at landing level, and then the upper storey flat with the rear roof extensions to provide the bedroom and bathroom. So again, very similar at the rear. Quite a sizable rear dormer and rear wing extension, but considered acceptable within the local area for amenity and conservation area character. And it's the same issue with space on the forecourt for 1 parking bay, refuse storage and cycle storage. And then the same matters at number 12 in the supplementary matters reports, noting the parking demand and capacity, the same comments from the Local Highways Authority. this would increase the parking demand by 1 space. But they have no objections on highway safety. And again, we recommended approval based on the good sustainability location of the site. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Members, questions? Judith?
Are the rear extensions on the ground floor existing?
Yes, as you can see, that's the existing rear wing, which is 2 rooms long, and that is the conversion of that same building. So the extensions are limited to the upper rear dormers.
Hugh.
Thank you.
If we compare this to the house for which we've just given planning permission, the front room on the second floor and the last one with this very, very large dormer was 37.5. With this minuscule dormer here, we have only 30, we're told it is 37 square metres. Has that been checked and to confirm that there is 37 square metres of usable space in this second storey?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I looked again with the case officer to double check. The usable space, I forget the height now, is up at a certain ceiling height. So although it has much less space along the front, because as you say, the next door but 2 has the full height, nevertheless, once you do a section and calculate, it does only make half a metre's difference. Quite surprising, but we have double checked that.
Darren.
Simon, the same question as with number 12. How many cars can credibly fit on the forecourt?
Credibly, 1, along with the refuse storage and bike storage.
Members, any comments?
I propose moving the officer's recommendations for the same reasons as number 12 Beach Road.
Thank you, and seconded by Councillor Smith. Unless there are any alternative views, let's move to the vote. Those in favour? Okay.
Again, that's unanimous and planning permission is granted.
Thank you. Okay. Mary Rose and Dragon. Or the former Mary Rose and Dragon. Simon?
Thank you, Chairman. This application has some objections, but has been called in by Councillor Holder on potential highway and parking impacts in particular, and the retail and residential uses and parking. So, St George's Road down in the edge of Old Portsmouth. So just to locate you. We have the roundabout at the northern end of High Street here. So we've got the grammar school, the university, Ravelin Park and the new sports centre, HMS Temeraire Sports Ground and Gun Wharf just up to the northwest. So this is St George's Road. And the side road here with houses directly opposite the site. And to the rear on to the both sides, the side and rear, is the very large electricity installation, and then the former pub on the front. So that's the view of the pub. Late 19th century, rather attractive design, rather unattractive forecourt. That's the access there, and a second access here next to the large electrical installation, and here are the houses opposite. That's the existing site plan, again as the front door to the former pub, access here, and there's the access to the substation. The conversion proposed is ground floor retail for a store, retail store, and with first floor 2 flats with various building works to facilitate. So to the side rear on Warblington Street, there will be some development to form the access up to the first floor, and then some extensions and so on at the rear. Quite a lot of internal works to convert it into a larger space with some structures retained for the proposed retail use. On the front, there would be a compound here for commercial ventilation, extraction, and refuse store, and then same for the residential refuse store and bikes. This would be with materials to be approved to get some good quality matching to the historic building. There's the entire site frontage, so residential and retail would come and go on the existing access on Warblington Street, and then the deliveries would be restricted to this area hatched. The rather sorry front we saw, the space would remain, and so that's a bit like the Highland Road application. This area here is certainly deep enough to get some decent landscaping in, so if approved we can expect to see this frontage well landscaped for environmental, aesthetic and ecological reasons, with probably a mix of brick planters, for example, to match the compound here, and some good quality landscaping of whatever type is agreed in due course if it's approved. To be clear for members, if you haven't picked up from the report, the ground floor retail use does not actually require planning permission, because the pub changed lawfully to a restaurant use some years ago, and in the 2020 update to the use classes order, the overall commercial class E is very wide. It includes restaurants and retail. So the applicant has applied for it because there can sometimes be a debate about these matters, and it's not unusual to apply and to gain a decision. Rather than putting in a lawful development certificate or something like that. If they gain planning permission, there's no question about it, and there's no doubt about them proceeding with the conversion to retail. We've nevertheless dealt with the matter in the report in terms of the acceptability of retail in this location with respect to amenity and wider retail town centre matters. The first floor accommodation, 2 flats. Sorry, gone the wrong way. So new access point on Warblington Street to the side, upstairs. There we are, leading to an outdoor platform effectively, into 1 flat here, 2-bedroomed, and a nice living kitchen room on the front corner, and then into another flat here, 2 bedrooms and a flat. This relationship, the front door next to the neighbour's bedroom, is not ideal. So I'll come back to that in a minute with this supplementary matters report. Quite a bit of internal works as well to obviously convert the building. The building itself, this is the front elevation, very attractive. I think these are later additions. This area would be changed in order to accommodate the functional aspects of the refuse storage and so on. So there will be a blocking up of this area behind the compound. But otherwise, the building is largely unchanged and indeed will be smartened up undoubtedly. The front door to the pub on the corner chamfer remains, and we agree with the applicants best not to alter that. And this window bay would have to be altered, as you can see here. So the top lights would be infilled with an appropriate material to match the glazed bricks, etc. And then there's no way around it. You'd have to remove the bricks at this level to get a modern retail front door in there. But that's a limited change to the building that we're prepared to accept for the other benefits of the scheme. Otherwise, I think that is the long and short of it. Yeah, we're happy to support the scheme for the reasons briefly set out. With respect to the supplementary matters, we've got the same matter of the correction to the 5-year housing land supply. It's 2.9 years, not 3.8. The privacy matter I mentioned for the residents, we need to reassess how that first floor could work if granted planning permission to make sure we've got a better privacy arrangement. That might have quite a few knock-on effects, so we've got a condition there to request that post decision to make sure that that is tidied up suitably. And lastly, we need a water use condition. It's a standard condition with respect to nitrates and sustainability, so we propose to attach that extra condition as attached in Appendix 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Mr. Frost, welcome. You have 6 minutes for your deputation.
Members of the Planning Committee, my name's Chris Frost. I'm the agent for this application. This application is for the change of use of the vacant Mary Rose and Dragon Chinese restaurant to a new convenience store with 2 flats above. The principle of a local convenience store on the site is acceptable and is fully supported by the Council's adopted policies. The store would serve the local community, providing conveniently located groceries as well as local employment. There are no objections to the proposals from statutory consultees, including the Council's own Highways Officer and the Environmental Health Officer. The change of use of the ground floor restaurant to retail would not in itself require planning permission, as both uses sit within the same use class. Permission is only required because of the minor physical alterations to the building and the conversion of the upper floor to 2 flats. However, we are aware of the concerns expressed in response to the application in relation to highway and parking impacts, and would like to take the opportunity to address them. In terms of traffic and congestion arising from the proposed store, there will be up to 29 and 35 vehicle arrivals associated with the convenience store in the morning and peak afternoon hours, respectively. The majority of these vehicle trips would be existing vehicle trips onto the highway network, which pass by or divert to the site to stop and purchase items, rather than being newly generated to the network. When considering the additional restaurant use and discounted the permitted restaurant use, the additional residential use and discounting the permitted restaurant use, the net traffic impact is 8 additional vehicles inbound to the site in the morning peak hour and 4 additional vehicle trips inbound in the afternoon peak hour. This traffic impact is marginal and will have an imperceptible impact on the operation of Warblington Street, St George's Road and the nearby junctions. Deliveries to the store will be managed by a delivery service management plan covered by condition. The store will not be serviced by HGVs or any vehicle longer than 10.5 metres, and the delivery hours will be restricted to protect residential amenity. In terms of parking, for local convenience stores, cardboard shoppers will pop in and buy a small amount of basket goods and then leave. This results in a short dwell time of cars in the car park, which averages between 5.5 and 9 minutes, meaning that even at peak times, the highway officer is satisfied that the 12 parking spaces proposed for the store can accommodate the anticipated demand. The potential for noise and disturbance arising from the operation of the store has also been raised as a concern by one neighbour. The site is currently a vacant restaurant, formerly a pub, which opened late at night and served alcohol. This use had the potential to cause noise or disturbance, as might a similar alternative occupier if the site were to reopen as a pub or a restaurant. However, we do not believe there to have been such problems historically with the site, and there's nothing to suggest that a convenience store would give rise to antisocial behaviour when a pub would not. The Environmental Health Officer is also satisfied that the proposed store would not have an unacceptable impact on the neighbouring residential amenity. As your officer's report sets out, the change of use itself does not require planning permission, but we're confident that the impact of the proposals would not adversely affect local residents or the highway network. To conclude, we believe that this is an excellent scheme, and we trust that you are able to follow your officer's recommendation to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Members, questions on the application? Councillor Mason.
Two questions. One for clarification. Am I right in thinking that to remove garbage from the first floor flats, the people would have to come down the stairs, walk along Warblington Street, walk across the car park to find a place to place their rubbish? Is there any way that this could be shortened if that is the case? My second question concerns the Cogswell frontage. Has it been considered the possibility of putting the retail entrance actually on Warblington Street itself, so to retain the rather elegant frontage onto St George's Road?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just looking at the floor plans again. The first floor terrace outside the front doors to the flats do show a couple of container type compounds.
Sorry, Simon, could we see them?
Yes, sure.
Please.
I think I might just have to close it and start again. It's not moving around for me. I don't know what's going on.
Does that mean it's not going to move for other presentations?
It just seems to have got stuck on this one. I'll have to describe it to you. I'm sorry, I don't seem to be able to manage it. On that first floor terrace, there are a couple of apparent compounds. But either way, Councillor, I don't think the bin men would come upstairs to pick it up, so residents would, as they go out that morning, take the rubbish down with them, and indeed, I think they would have to walk across to the front, which I think you can do with a bin bag to get it into the actual wheelie bin in the compound, out of the front. So yes, there's a bit of a walk, yes. As opposed to your question about the front door, That's a good suggestion, I think. I don't know about how, if there's an operator already lined up, I expect there is, and how they would like the store to function. From their point of view, I would have thought that having the retail entrance on the street so that people can see it is what they would like as a retailer, so people can clearly see, and it's more easily to get to from people who happen to drive to the site. I take your point that alterations would be better to the side elevation as the less important elevation. I agree with you. But then as to the detail of the alteration, it's a rich frontage with a lot of architecture and quality going on. This is a minor negative factor, I wouldn't deny that, but we can make the best of it by careful. We've got architectural details by condition to make sure that we are very happy with the quality of the materials, the recesses, the junctions, all of those important points to make sure that that is the best thing it can be. I think once in real life, when you look at the building, that shouldn't jump out so badly at the viewer, and you should still appreciate the overall composition and quality of the building.
Judith.
I'm referring to, I'm concerned about the sort of bleak car parking environment. And you have got under here a comment about landscaping, which I think is a bit too loose, and also under conditions. There's a condition under 9B and 9C referring to landscaping. I mean, I think there's room here for 2 or 3 decent trees, and indeed that would prevent or mitigate, or soften down the view that we otherwise have on that site of the back of the electricity substation, which contributes to the bleakness of the site. I would like to see a condition strengthened with some relatively mature trees put in as part of the landscaping, obviously subject to the approval of the city arboriculturalist and so forth. But I would like to ask first as a question whether this would be possible, and then second of all, later on, suggest that we have a strengthened condition.
Simon.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I think the condition is all there. It's up for negotiation between the applicant and the local planning authority. Clearly, we take the advice of our landscape officers. They know what is best for any particular site, the space available and so on. I agree with you. It would be appropriate to see if some frontage trees could be achieved, as the site seems to be big enough. The depth of that landscaping space in places seems to be big enough to be able to accommodate whatever size tree is appropriate, species and so on for future growth. So I'm sure that we will find a good scheme, and it may well include trees.
I think it's a site that would take trees, but both front and back potentially. So I wondered if that you thought it would be a good idea to strengthen that condition so that it was clear that it wasn't just a few planters with dried grass in that you were thinking about.
We simply wouldn't approve a poor scheme that came in. We'd ask for it to be properly done, and if it wasn't, then they'd have the condition application refused, that they have to clear that condition. So I'm sure the applicant will want to work with us positively, and we'll get a good scheme early on.
I'm not sure that answers the question.
Will it contain trees?
I don't know yet. I don't know yet, but I'm sure we can make every effort. It depends on the details of each case.
Maybe we'll add some words.
Incidentally, I'm bitterly regretting not having required trees in the front of the 2 Beach Road properties, but I understand it's too late, but I may try and do that in some other
Outside
way.
of this, yeah. Councillor Smith.
I too was just asking about, I was going to ask about the planting, because it was a little bit vague, yeah, about what was going to go there. So strengthening of that, some words to that account would be really, really good. My other point was around parking for the residents. Is there any way to sort of secure that in some way so it's different? Because I know what the gentleman said at the back about the traffic movements and the dwell time and everything else, but I just got, it's more maybe a question or a comment, that the 2 residential parking bays there will probably be parked in by the shoppers, and that might then force the residents onto the street. So maybe some way of denoting that so that the residents' parking spaces are actually there for good.
So.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I agree that could be a temptation if the other spaces were full up. We can perhaps weave that into one of the other conditions, fuller details of that, just to make sure it's managed correctly. I'm sure the site provider and residents would want to achieve that anyway, whether it's just demarcation or bollards or whatever it may be. But we'll see if we can find, with your consent, a way of weaving that into one of the conditions and addressing it that way.
Members' comments? No? Okay. Judith, you're pensive.
If there are no more comments, I'd like to propose that we approve this with a condition strengthening the landscaping condition to make it clear the difference between resident parking and non-resident parking, and introducing several trees onto the site.
Seconded by Councillor Smith. Any other views, thoughts? So and Juliet, do we need to have some wording, or are you happy to?
Sorry, Simon, I was looking for you in the usual place.
If you're happy, I'm happy to weave that into the existing landscape condition to the stronger wording or more clearer language, and trees, and indeed the second matter of the parking, making sure that they are protected, if you like, for the residential users.
Yeah, yes, I'm content for the officer to do that following the committee.
Thank you, Juliet. We're happy with that. Okay, to the vote then. So with those strengthened conditions, those in favour? Those against? Abstentions?
Planning permission is granted.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Welcome back, Councillor Sanders. St Piran's Avenue. He's off. Darren, I'm sure you could have sat there. You didn't need to move.
Okay, Chairman. Thank you. 49 St Piran's Avenue, change of use from a dwelling house to a flexible dwelling house C3 or Class C4 HMO. That's not working. It's not progressing the slides. I'll just close it down and open it again to see if that helps. Apologies.
It's okay.
There we are. Sorry, another. Number 49, marked with the green dot there, and that's the location plan, so in the middle of a residential street. There's the view of the property presently, typical Portsmouth terrace with a small front garden, two-storey Victorian property. The existing property, a traditional style with the main body of the house and a rear wing, replicated at first floor. So the proposal is to extend ground floor level here with the prior approval it already has set out in the report, and to extend at roof level with, again, permitted development extensions to the rear in order to gain living accommodation in the roof. So we have 6 bedrooms for 6 individual occupiers, front a bedroom here, each of them has an ensuite. There we have a lounge retained with some more sanitary facilities there in the middle of the house, and then the back dining and kitchen area, and the back door into the house, and the bike store into the garden, sorry. First level, 3 bedrooms, each with an ensuite. Then up into the roof, again, 2 bedrooms and 2 en-suites. So sticking with the simplicity of the size and layout of the property, as the table sets out, it meets the standards with respect to the living accommodation, subject to the extra condition we've recommended in the SMAT, in the supplementary matters, to make sure that the prior approval element is indeed provided before occupation, to make sure there is enough communal living space for these 6 occupiers. Otherwise, the ground floor room there, bathroom, is slightly undersized, but because each room has its own ensuite, these are the ground floor toilet and bathroom are effectively extras, so there's no difficulty there with the overall sanitary arrangements for the property. Otherwise, the principal matter we look at is the sustainable communities. Is it a balanced community or not? And the 10% guidance threshold within 50 metres of the site. So that's set out for you in the report. There's one other HMO in Chasewater Avenue within the 50 metres. This would take it up to 2, which is a figure of 2.82%, so below the 10% threshold that we would normally operate to. So notwithstanding a strong level of local objection from the wide range of issues they have raised, the recommendation nevertheless is for approval. So for completeness, the supplementary matters issue is the extra condition proposed in the event of a consent to make sure the prior approval rear ground floor extension is completed prior to occupation as a C4 HMO. And then we have at least 2 local residents, I think, here to speak.
Thank you, Simon. So, yes, we have 4 deputations on this application. So let's start with Mr. Leonard. And you have some supplementary information for the committee. Are we able to distribute that, Anna? I think we might need to be sharing some. Is that right? Yeah. So if we just...
There are 5 copies.
Okay, so members can work out how that might work.
Chair, is it 2 for and 2 against speaking?
It's 3 against, 1 for.
Okay, the 6 minutes needs to be shared between the 3.
Well, okay. Well, what one's... Thank you. No, I don't. Thank you. Ms. Lennon, Ms. Tobbett, I've just been reminded, legal advice is that you have 6 minutes between you. So if you can... Yes, but you have, in terms of the total amount of time available is 6 minutes. So I don't know if there's some way that you can, between you, make 6 minutes.
I'm slightly confused on that. Are you actually saying that the 3 of us have only got 6 minutes to speak?
No, the 2 of you only have 6 minutes in total to speak. So if you could try and work something out that isn't too much longer than 6 minutes.
Yep.
Sorry, would it be possible for me, I mean, I've got 2 documents to read. Would it be possible for me to do mine first and then pass over?
Whatever might work for you.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to Mr. Tobbett. Mr. Tobbett, your deputation, if you can be mindful of 6 minutes between
thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. Firstly, thanks for allowing me to explain my reasons for opposing this planning application. There's several reasons. Firstly is the issue of lack of sunlight in my garden due to the 6 metre length of the extension, the work to be carried out in the loft space of number 49. Over recent years, we've had a conservatory built at the rear of our house so we could enjoy the garden in retirement, where we'll be soon.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come in?
Sorry.
I've been corrected.
Oh.
Those 4 will have 12 minutes to share, and those against 12 minutes.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Tobbett. We'll carry on.
Okay. I'll start. So over recent years, as I said, we've just had a conservatory built to the rear of our house so we could enjoy our garden. With our grandchildren constantly playing in the garden when the weather's good, it seemed a good investment. However, if the plan at 49 goes ahead, this conservatory will be in shadow most of the day. The reason I say this is we are to the north of number 49, so any additional building, extensions, or the change of profile to the roof shape will cause an issue with shadows. The changes to number 49 also causes me an issue with privacy, as my garden will be permanently overlooked, which makes my wife and I feel uncomfortable, so we would not use the garden or conservatory as intended, which I think is unacceptable. That would also impact my wider family. I'd also like to raise the issue of noise. We've recently had 3 residents living in number 49, and we can pretty much hear everything. Including phone calls and normal conversations, due to the thin walls of these houses. And I fear having 6 residents next door could make this worse. My wife works from home and has a fairly regular online meetings, which will prove difficult, as it did when the builders recently went into the house to commence some work. With the amount of building work required at number 49, I also have concerns regarding the structure of my own property. These are old buildings that, in my opinion, are not big enough or sturdy enough for this type of development. I have an issue with parking in the area, and having read the reasons why the highways engineer did not register an objection, I find it strange that a full assessment was not carried out. I know, and so do many others, there is a real parking issue, not just in St Piran's, but in the wider area. I myself finish work and arrive home at approximately 4:30. I can't park in the street. I park in Litchfield Road, which is 2 streets away. As this is a one-way street and very narrow, people tend to park in the first space available, so the road fills pretty quickly. To add to this, if I arrive home at 7 p.m, which I have done recently, I have needed to travel to Baffin's Pond to park. So, as you can see, this not only impacts St Piran's residents, but if we have to park in surrounding areas, it impacts those residents as well. There is actually no off-street parking in St Piran's. The garage at the north end of the street belongs to the church in Tangiers Road, and the 2 garages at the south end of the street belong to properties in Hayling Avenue. There is also an HMO in Baffin's Road. This has no parking whatsoever, so I would imagine they would use St Piran's Avenue. In addition, I would like to add that no resident in St Piran's were informed of any planning permission requirement for their rear extension at 49. That includes myself at 47 and number 51, which of course are directly impacted by this construction. In fact, we were only notified by the builders when they entered the property. I would like to add that no work has commenced on the rear extension as yet, but some initial work has been carried out inside the property. I was also informed that all persons who raised objections were to be informed of this meeting. This is also not the case, and no one was informed at all, including myself and number 51, which has caused issues on us being able to represent ourselves today as promised. Finally, I would like to add one concern I have for the future residents of the HMO in 49 St Piran's if planning permission is granted. There is only one entrance, which is a standard front door onto the street. There is no side or rear entrance, so if God forbid a fire should start at the front of the building, the residents would have nowhere to go. They'd have to go to the rear of the property, and due to the 6-metre extension and the bike shed, these residents will have no escape and will be, in my belief, congregated no more than 10 feet from a burning building, which I feel is unacceptable. Just to add to this, we recently had a fire at the south end of the street, which the fire brigade could not access. They could not access St Piran's due to the road width and the inconsiderate parking in the street, and had to eventually go to the other end of the street, reverse down to the property, which caused major delays which could have been fatal. Just as a note, as I have raised the issues of sunlight and privacy, I would be happy for any members of the committee to visit my property to substantiate my claims. I'm sure this is also the case at number 51. There are photos for your attention. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Leonard, if you'd like to give your deputation.
Yes, good afternoon, panel. The drawing submitted by the developer has very limited information, does not indicate heights, which is of great importance to number 47. Elevations and sections should be submitted, which will give a completely different outlook to the application. Have a look at my drawing if you've got it in front of you. This is not a dormer roof construction, but the removal of 50% of the main roof and the removal of the lean-to to the annex. Raised walls and a flat roof over is also proposed. The planning officer, in my opinion, is incorrect in his assessment. In his assessment, item 3.3 and item 3.4. It is a new extension over the first floor of some 32 odd square meters. The first, a dormer is a projection from a roof. There are no dormers indicated, but a 2-meter high wall, 6 meters long, on the existing first floor eaves line. And this is required to obtain headroom. The application should be looked at in light of the information submitted by me and elevations and sections submitted for the planning panel to have a clear idea of the proposal. Headroom will be a problem in the main part of the front of the house, which has only got a 2.1 metre headroom internally at the moment. 3 Valaxes have been shown, have been stated by the planning officer, but only 2 are on the drawing. In conclusion, all previous applications I have seen today have clearly shown the elevations and sections, and I'm surprised that the planning officer could arrive at his decision to approve this application without further information. It is not a dormer room, it is a new flat roof extension, and you can see it from my drawing, the impact of that 6-metre wall facing number 49, plus the floor plan which shows you the area that is involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Darren, you have unlimited time, but please don't take me off the middle.
Well, I hope there'll be a limit on it. I think that's the first thing, Chris. I've come to this situation after being approached by residents, not just Gary, but also other residents in the road as well, including the lady at 51 who's asked me to read out her comments about it, if I may. Her view is, thank you for this opportunity to raise my concerns about number 49 St Piram's Avenue becoming HMO. For the first time in roughly 10 years, my children and I are not being disturbed by unreasonable noise levels from 49. I've lost count of the number of times I've had to call the police about the previous owners' noise and behaviour. In October, workmen entered the property and the noise from the work they were doing was deafening. There was nowhere in my house to get away from it. My son was unable to complete his college work and my daughter was unable to revise for school because of the disruption. This work also made a crack in my hall ceiling by the party wall, and it made it expand. A photo has been shown of this, and I have seen that photo. If damage is caused to my property through the building work, my landlord will possibly blame me for the damage, and I run the risk of being evicted. I was very upset that I wasn't given an opportunity to object about the extension planned, as I wasn't informed about it, and I was only found out about it when planning permission was approved. So, which is their comment for prior approval. This will overlook my garden, as will the extension into the roof to make more bedrooms. If you approve the plan proposals, I will have no privacy in my garden. Another thing I like to add is the parking in St Piram's Avenue. It is horrendous. I get home from work about 3:30 p.m. each day, and 9 times out of 10 I'll have to park on a different road in Baffins. This problem will only get worse with an extra 6 or more cars needing spaces. Finally, I wish to mention the Langford Road house collapse. I read an article that it's possibly structural foundation problems or weak bricks that caused the collapse. If for some unfathomable reason permission is granted for the HMO, are these areas going to be checked before any work starts? I don't wish to be in the same unfortunate position as those residents, and I'm sure none of my neighbours do either. Thank you for your time. It was as a result of those of local residents coming to me that I made investigations about the property, also investigations about the extension as well, which has been granted prior approval. And I have 3 concerns about it. The first is parking. You can't park in the road. We've already gone through various applications today, particularly in Beach Road, whereby you can't park. But those applications were not going to have a detrimental impact on parking in the area. The officers are very clear that this will. It may be small, but it will. The fact that only 3 people actually lived in the property initially meant that the actual parking increase will be significant. We as ward councillors have been working with people in the road and the council for years on this, trying to find a resolution to an issue. The road is narrow and the houses are very, very narrow. So this will have an increase in parking that will not be dealt with in any other way. So that's my first concern. My second concern is around the impact on the amenity of neighbouring properties. And this is where the link in the SMAT, which local people believe to be correct, between the extension and the HMO is important. It's my view, and the view of local residents, that without the HMO, the extension won't happen. And the only way the HMO can happen is if the extension happens. That's a link made explicit in the SMAT. And so the impact, if you pass the HMO, will mean an impact on both 49 and 51 that will be significant. An extension to 79 St Piram's Avenue has already been refused by officers. Prior approval was not granted on the grounds of the impact of its overlooking at 77 St Piram's Avenue. It is not clear whether that will be used for HMO. I know people involved with it have been dealing in HMOs elsewhere in the city, but we cannot make that assumption, although the builders do. because they're in at the moment. And that is now the subject of a planning enforcement notice. So we know that there is already concern by planners about extensions in the road. And so the impact on overlooking at both 49 and 51, I've also been in several of the flats in houses in St Pyramans Avenue, and Gary's right about the noise. You can actually hear pins drop in those houses, which is quite rare. And the impact of 6 people with an extension will be significant, and I believe will be detrimental to the amenity of 49 and 51, and frankly also to the amenity of future occupiers. Because they're going to have to cope with extensive noise, kids running around and stuff like that, and that may not be ideal. So I'm putting forward 2 particular options for the committee. My preference is that you refuse this on the grounds of the impact on parking, as per the highways comments, and also on the impact of the amenity of 49 and 51 through the overlooking that will occur, and also through the impact on noise as well, and also the impact on the amenity of the future occupiers. If you do not feel that that is appropriate, and I understand why, because you've been given elevations and plans that may not match up, I would ask colleagues to defer for a site visit. That occurred in a previous application in Paignton Avenue, which my colleague Councillor Stagg asked for, and I know that members of the committee were quite amazed at the amount of overlooking and the amount of height that was available. These are very, very narrow houses, much more narrow than the stuff that we see in places in South Copner, for instance. These are much, much more narrow. There is more impact on parking. I'm more than happy to invite everybody to Baffins, as always, to discuss things, and I'm sure that the neighbours will be happy to invite committee colleagues as well. My preference is to refuse. I understand that HMOs are always difficult. I'm sure that Agent Simon will confirm whether the conservatory will go ahead if the HMO is refused today. I look forward to that, but I believe it's a refusal, and if not, a deferral for a site visit. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Darren. Mr. Hill, 6 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I think listening to the deputations that have already taken place, I can understand some of the concerns, and I think there's probably some work to do either way in terms of maybe correcting some of the understanding of perception of what's going to take place versus what's actually taking place. I think it would be right and proper, firstly, to address these plans that have been distributed. So, and it's unusual for somebody to have gone to the effort of drawing them up when they're opposing a deputation, so I appreciate the work that's gone into that. What I can say is there's some assumptions that have been made in terms of how the works are being carried out which aren't correct. So in order to achieve the head height which is needed, which is stipulated both by planning, by building control and also by licensing, and will be checked by building control and licensing as part of their inspections, ultimately what happens is we lower the ceiling on the first floor of the property in order to create additional head height on the top floor. So all of the works we're carrying out will be carried out by permitted development. There are elevations that were submitted as part of the planning application that have had the opportunity to be considered. I'm more than happy to share them with those objecting. But ultimately, we're not extending the roof beyond the ridge. We're not allowed to do so. The ridge beam is placed at the height of the ridge, and then ultimately the rafters come off of that to form the dormer. So ultimately the head height's created because, as you well know, in these sorts of houses there's very high ceilings on all floors. We lower the ceiling on the first floor, that creates additional head height in the loft space. It's important to note that actually the requirements for HMO are higher in terms of head height than they would be for a family home, which is why you often see a lot of houses that have had a loft conversion without the lowering of the ceiling, but we have additional head height so that all of the space can be used. In terms of the extension has been granted planning permission under a prior approval application that has already been approved. So onto the main body of my deputation. I can confirm that at this stage HMO licence has not yet been applied for. It's very normal. We've only started enabling works as when we're not yet close to completion. We're awaiting the planning to be approved, hopefully, and then ultimately we'll apply for the licence. We have never had an application for a licence refused, and once we finish, we ensure all the properties are fully compliant. I confirm the property is fully compliant with building regulations. It does have building control approval, the relevant number being PF 22/1646. This was given in conjunction with Hampshire Fire and Rescue. It's a requirement of the building regulations that a fire alarm system with a panel is fitted, which will take place. We also have a fire risk assessment carried out for each property, which is a requirement of the licensing, which we've always complied with. My understanding with the complaints or the objections raised in terms of fire is that all of these will be dealt with by the building works, and ultimately are very similar to other planning applications that have already been approved and fire risk assessments carried out. I recognise I presented fairly regularly at these meetings. Firstly, probably most importantly, within a 50-metre radius of 71 properties, one identified as an HMO, so including number 49 St Piran's, there'll be 2.82% HMOs. I also note the comments about another property on the road potentially having enforcement notice on it. That's got nothing to do with our business. We've never had an enforcement notice on any of the properties we operate on. If anything, given the fact that the number of HMOs would actually be less than 30% of the maximum allowed, I would conclude that given the SPD is designed to achieve diverse and inclusive communities, sadly it would appear that prior to now, this part of St Piran's Avenue in particular is lacking in the diversity that our professional young residents will bring to the area. The works we're carrying out are all carried out under permitted development or prior approval. That is to say, very, very importantly, that the works carried out do not require planning permission. Indeed, the only thing we need planning permission for is the occupation of the building by more than two unrelated individuals. The application for the prior approval was 2100159 GPDC, which, as I've already said, has been approved. To address briefly some of the letters of objection, in terms of inadequate standard of living accommodation, this is completely unfounded. My business has a very good reputation for the highest standard of HMOs. We're achieving record rents for the local area. Macroeconomics determines the rents rather than us. I believe this is a brilliant indicator of how the market receives our rooms. All the party walls will actually be insulated. There was a point made about the previous occupants of the property. It would be improper for me to comment on those people, but what I can say is that this purchase took nearly 18 months to go through due to issues with those occupiers. I can very much believe that there probably was significant noise disturbance from those people, and indeed when I visited the property on a number of occasions the police were present, as well as members of social services, etc. So ultimately I understand the residents probably haven't had it easy with the previous occupiers of the property, but I don't believe that the professional inhabitants that we're going to put into the property should be put into the same negative connotations as those that were previously there, that was actually a family. So, in terms of Portsmouth as a city, there's a 62% working age population. It's one of the most densely populated cities in Europe, and sadly, although it's got a reputation for employment opportunities for young people, there's a significant lack of accommodation for those people. There's around 4,300 HMOs in the city, and I would agree that many of them are not fit for purpose. However, we do try and make sure that our HMOs are fully compliant, which this one is. All of the room sizes are compliant. The communal area is huge, it's 34 square metres, and we've facilitated en-suites to all of the rooms. We inspect the properties every week. The communal areas are cleaned weekly. We have digital contact with the tenants 24 hours a day. We use a maintenance system to report any issues. We employ a significant number of local contractors. Importantly, we upgrade the drainage and within the property and within the garden to cope with the increase of waste. We also have a waste carrier's licence, and any rubbish will be removed swiftly. In relation to the transport, I note the comments of the highways officer, and I note that they said it wouldn't be a material increase in terms of parking. Obviously, if it were to be refused on that ground, we would be appealing it, which I believe, from the advice I've taken, would be a successful appeal, would be likely to be a successful appeal. We currently have a waiting list of tenants. We've built up for some of our rooms, which again I think indicates the standard. I'm more than happy for those objecting to come and see some of our other properties, the standard of accommodation that we offer, and to address any of their other concerns that they have by doing so. We've never had any examples of antisocial behaviour at any of our HMOs. In fact, we're regularly approached by neighbours to confirm there haven't been any issues and that things were significantly better than they thought. Thank you very much for listening to my deputation, and I hope you look upon it favourably.
Thank you. Councillor New.
Thank you, Chair. So I have some sympathy with my colleague, Councillor Sanders, who's removed himself from the committee to be able to make a deputation. So in a previous life, I used to live in Stride Avenue, so I know this area very well. I agree with all of the points raised. I think that deferral might be a good option. So that will be my question in a moment, but I did want to just kind of break the rules a bit and throw in a few comments. Really, just to perhaps give some strength to that and to really back up the deputation from Councillor Sanders. The housing there is much more narrower than elsewhere, than like in my own ward in Copner, etc. I don't think it's suitable for a HMO. It might just about fit our policies, etc., in terms of the actual sizes on paper, but I don't think it would be appropriate. I can totally understand the strength of feeling from the residents here that have come to give deputations, and also those houses are thin. When I lived in Stride Avenue, which I would also add are bigger than the houses that we're actually considering here, I could hear all of my neighbours, I could hear what people were doing in the street behind me, etc. I don't think it lends itself to large-scale HMO conversions at all, and so while I'd actually moved to refuse this, I think it would be wise perhaps for the rest of the committee that would benefit from doing a site visit, that we did look to defer it if this item, if we could do, to go and do a site visit so that people can be better informed in making a decision on this, Chair.
Was there a question anywhere in
Yes, could we defer it?
Okay, Councillor Mason.
Could you put up the floor plans on the screen again?
You can just bear with me, please.
Most certainly.
Always the technology. I'm sure. I don't know if it can someone multitask a question on the phone. Go ahead, go on.
Very simple question, really. So the additional lounge has I want to say, a little ensuite bathroom next to it, which doesn't actually match requirements. I know previously we've had applications like this where it's 6, but that is, have we got guarantees that's not going to be a 7? And especially if we approve it with knowing that bathroom is not enough, and then suddenly it comes in for the 7 and say, well, you approved it last time for 6.
I think that's an important one because this was the basis of which I wanted to see the floor plans. Because the floor plans which we have in front of us on page 117 show a solid wall between the lounge and this strange additional shower room. But what was shown on the screen, I think, shows that it is integral to the lounge, that there would be just a door straight from the lounge into a new shower room. And I just wanted to check that. Either way, I think that the only rationale for having a shower room there is that the lounge would be a 7th bedroom.
Chair, just to add to this, because I wanted to ask the question, why is there an extra bathroom downstairs when everybody else has got it? It's sensible to have a WC, consider it for those needing a quick access to WC from the kitchen, but that bathroom makes no sense at all.
Simon.
Chairman, I do apologise. I'm defeated by the technology. I had it. It was there already, and it's just not playing ball today. But we do at least have the plans in front of us.
Well, would you agree that what you showed a different configuration there to what you have shown on the papers in front of us?
I can't even get to that image now. It's stuck. You're right, Councillor, yes. The plans were updated to show the kitchen layout. So in the report that I think most of you have in paper in front of you, and apologies again for live viewers and so on, the prior approval rear extension has no indicative layout. We asked for that, and they provided, which is in the plan that was shown to you earlier that I can't get to now, at the end of the extension, so you've got a rear window facing down the garden, what's left of it, and there was a kitchen worktop, a U-shaped kitchen worktop placed around the end of that kitchen area.
I'm sorry, that is not what we were talking about.
I'm just explaining why we received the new plan. It was for that reason, and so that was all we looked at. But I have seen, so we weren't expecting a different layout, which has changed, and it's difficult for me to explain it to you. Basically, the plans in the report show indeed the lounge with its own door and the communal downstairs shower room with its own door off the hall. Councillor Mason correctly has seen that the amended plan has the shower room off the lounge for some reason. So there is a change there that we hadn't noticed or asked for. In any event, I can move on to some of the questions if I may, and then the points made. For example, Councillor Simpson, will this be a future bedroom, etc., etc.? I don't know. We don't know. We have to determine the application in front of us. If it was granted planning consent for a flexible C3, C4 HMO dwelling house, they would need another planning application depending on the merits of it. This committee usually believes it does, to go from a C4 to a sui generis larger one, and all those applications are coming before you at present, and so you would have that view of that again. But on the face of it, with or without the ground floor communal shower room and communal toilet, the facilities are deemed acceptable because each bedroom has its own ensuite. So it's one of those scenarios that we see quite often, but on the face of it, it complies with policy.
Okay, thanks, Simon. So, well, we have a proposal to defer. I don't know what the appetite is around the room for anything else at this stage.
Sorry, just following on from the last point. So what we will be agreeing anyway, whatever way, is are we agreeing it with the doorway into the lounge with the shower room? Because you're talking about, when we're talking about the drawings, we're talking about two different things here, aren't we?
We don't know. We don't know.
Another comment. I mean, I think the amount of times that we see HMOs come in with obviously inadequate parking because the parking was probably really bad, even probably 10, 20 years ago. I don't know if Rob could confirm that, but I'm pretty sure parking was probably difficult even then when he was living there. You know, we've got 145 signatures here. We've got, 40 of the 33 households of objection. I think there's also a little bit of question mark over some of this planning that I'm a bit concerned about. I'm concerned about this other room that looks very much like it could be the 7th. And I'm concerned that if we did vote it through, then they'd be like, well, you accepted the bathroom for what it was now. I think on just the terms that there's a lot of question marks over the planning, especially that's been submitted, I think we should refuse.
Remember, we must only take in consideration the material planning aspects of that, rather than the number of signatures on a petition. Councillor Smythe.
I've got another question, which is about the. If you look at the site location plan, it doesn't show the proposed extension, and I'd like to have seen a plan with the proposed extension showing the space in the garden left, and also I would like to see the elevations, which we haven't seen yet, both of the roof area, which I understand will be the same height at the ridge, and that's acceptable. But it is a big extension for a small house. And I understand it's been given planning permission, but I would like to have known more details about that and how much was permitted development and how much was a planning permission. So for that reason, I would also think that a deferral would be more sensible at this stage, because it's a large, as far as I can see from the plans, it's a very large extension for a very small house.
Are you formally seconding? I think, Rob, yours was a proposal?
Yeah, let's turn it into a proposal. I would like to formally propose deferral to enable or facilitate a site visit chair, if I can get a seconder for that.
I think you may have just had one. Yeah. Judith, are you happy to say
Yes, I am, but I think we need really strong mine was actually a question, not very well
okay.
phrased, which was about getting more evidence and information about this huge extension. And I'm also concerned about this silly additional bathroom, which nobody in this house needs.
Okay. So a formal seconder. Linda, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I'd just like a bit more clarity just on the this roof, this ridge height. I've heard both versions now, and I'd just like, if we're going to visit the site, I'd just like to make sure that, are we cracking the ridge height? I mean, obviously that would be a whole different thing. I understand what's been said at the back from Simon, that the floors are going to be lowered. So I just want to make sure from the planner's point of view, the roof height's not going to be, the ridge height, sorry, is not going to be broken.
Thank you, Chair. We don't necessarily ask for elevations on changes of use. Although physical changes are proposed to the property, they're outside of this planning application. So sometimes it's better not to complicate matters by start looking at elevations of something that is permitted development. And indeed, this is why there was no such submission, and we didn't ask for it for this application. The prior approval details are limited, and that's all that is required at prior approval stage. So that's why there are no elevations in front of you. And to be clear for the residents, the prior approval and the ground floor rear extension has prior approval. There were no objections at the time, so it can be built whether or not this is an HMO, which goes back to an earlier point. Not only C4 HMOs have prior approval extensions, plenty of family houses in Portsmouth have prior approval extensions. So the two shouldn't automatically be conflated together. This property or any other property could apply for a prior approval extension, and if it achieves it without objection, then that is allowed. The same for the permitted development roof extensions. They are permitted development, and many houses in Portsmouth achieve that, whether or not they are HMOs or Class C3 family dwelling houses. So that's important to realise. It's also important for the residents to know that there's nothing that can be done about those two things. If they comply with the regulations, they comply. So the effects on privacy and overlooking and structure and so on are without the consideration today. The agent has talked about the building regulations as well with respect to fire and structure and so on, which is also important to bear in mind. But back to the points being raised, again, all I can say is that there is a concern about the lounge and the bathroom, but that is not the application in front of you. There's no application for more than 6. This is an application for a C4 up to 6 people occupying together, and it has to be taken on face value and its own merits. So it does comply with policy in respect to the balance of the community. It does respect the space standards and so on, so that is why it's recommended for approval. The parking demand is very limited difference from the property as a house, as a C3 house. The occupation has demonstrated here a family can make an awful lot of noise, will be difficult. Whether or not an HMO does as well is it's not evidenced. Lastly, Councillor Smythe, you reasonably asked about the back garden and so on. I believe the line shown in the plan by I've just been checking, I would say is the back boundary. So you would be left with a very limited backyard there after the extension and the bike store were put in. But again, the prior approval extension is allowed, and many people do this, whether it's a house or an HMO. They choose to have more inside living accommodation than outside space.
Thank you for answering that particular question, Simon. I mean, it's just a huge thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Councillor Mason first.
Yeah, not the ground floor, but the second floor changes. These require the lowering of the, from what I gather, the lowering of the ceilings on the first floor. Would this also require the lowering of the floor levels on the second floor, or will the second floor be, as shown on the plans, totally level? And in either case, since there is a material alteration to the structure of the house, would that require planning permission?
Thank you, Councillor. I would presume that if the first floor ceiling is being lowered, therefore the floor of the upper storey would also tie in with that. But that's a detail that's beyond planning. To be honest, that is dealt with by the building regulations and possibly the licensing. You talked about whether or not it's a level floor. That's building regulations and/or licensing that would deal with that. But again, those sorts of details and fire and structure matters are outside of planning.
Are you okay with the sun? Sorry, I know you're battling the sun.
Sorry, Chair. It was only just to follow on from my original question. But I understand about planning permission if you don't break the ridge height. All I was just trying to clarify from the local residence plan, it sort of shows that the ridge height would be broken. I was just wanting to clarify from the planning officer's point of view that the ridge height wasn't being broken and therefore it was in planning. I didn't quite get that.
Okay, Simon, can you clarify?
I'm sorry, I don't have any information about those sorts of structural changes and heights. I'm sorry, Councillor.
So we have a proposal on the table. Russell, was yours a formal proposal?
Chair. You did point out it wasn't enough material change for it to be a refusal.
You can table whichever motion.
Thank you. Sorry, one last point. Because of the speculation around the future use and so on, by our estimation, actually, the property would comply with standards still if the second lounge were converted into a 7th bedroom for a 7th occupier, because of the provision of the en-suites in each of the bedrooms and the provision of the ground floor rear extension. The property could comply as a 7-bedroom HMO on our space standards. Just thought I'd mention that as well.
Okay, let's make some progress. We have a proposal on the table. Councillor New and Symes, sorry. No, sorry, it's Linda, sorry. Symes, sorry. I'm getting mixed up. It happens. It happens. Yeah, exactly. Anybody else?
Sorry, is the deferral to do a site visit?
To do a site visit, yeah. In the absence of...
And presumably that is to see whether the property, as is and as it has planning permission, is suitable to be at least a 6-bedroom HMO, correct?
That's... Rob, was that your understanding?
Yes.
You're happy with that, Linda? Okay, well, that's the only thing we have on the table. Let's move to the vote. Do we want to defer and have a site visit? Those in favour? And against? Abstentions? Okay.
The application's been deferred for a site visit.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you. That concludes today's business. I close the meeting at 12:46. See you next time.